friends and colleagues in the Philippine and Australian governments, fellow academics, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. First, let me say that it gives me great pleasure to play a part in this year's Philippine Update Conference 2016. Notwithstanding my inability to fly to Canberra, owing to several urgent matters that demand my attention in my capacity as chairperson of the newly instituted Philippine Competition Commission, our country's antitrust authority. I suppose that my previous appointment as Socioeconomic Planning Secretary in the Aquino administration gave me a front row seat to the country's transformation in recent years. The highs and lows of high-level policymaking, as well as the transition of power from President Aquino to President Duterte. In keeping with the conference theme, let me share with you some of my own observations and reflections on where the Philippines has been and some ideas on where it might be headed under this new administration. I do promise to make this as quick as possible. Overly long speeches are seldom useful in front of a hungry audience. First off, by most accounts, the Philippines has indeed enjoyed a surge of growth and macroeconomic stability in recent years. The country's economic growth rate averaged 6.2% from 2010 to 2015, the highest 6-year average growth since the late 1970s. This makes the Philippines one of the fastest growing major emerging economies in the world today. The economic structure is also changing, with signs of investment spending in the industrial sector resurgence, though the economy is admittedly still very much consumption and service oriented. Such stellar economic performance has also been accompanied by strong macroeconomic fundamentals, unprecedented level of confidence among players in the domestic and international business communities, improved competitiveness rankings, and a much stronger external position owing to the resilience of remittances and income from growth areas like business process outsourcing or BPO activities and tourism. This, along with many other positive indicators, have led many to think that the Philippines has finally shed its moniker as the sick man of Asia and transformed into one of the region's brightest economic hubs. Such transformation, of course, has had its fair share of hiccups along the way. One of the major challenges faced by the previous administration, and will most likely be also faced by the current one, is how to make such growth more inclusive. That is, how to translate economic gains into faster reduction of poverty and inequality in access to opportunities. To be sure, part of the challenge is that, globally, economic growth today has become less able to reduce poverty compared to 2 or 3 decades ago. For one, economic growth has become less employment intensive than before. The widespread growth of ICT, a labor-saving technology, and globalization has also tended to widen the gap between skilled and unskilled segments of the global workforce. In the Philippines, attaining inclusivity and poverty reduction has been made even more difficult by a number of natural challenges, such as the onset of major earthquakes in the Visayas and Typhoon Haiyan in 2013, considered one of the strongest typhoons in recorded history. More importantly, there were also a number of institutional and governmental bottlenecks that weakened the translation of growth to poverty reduction. For instance, food policy experienced several wrinkles that kept basic food prices, particularly rice prices, much higher than what they would have been if international trade on food was less restrictive. A number of industries have also experienced increasing education skills mismatches, contributing to the persistently high underemployment rate, even among college graduates. The country's low level of physical formation was addressed by instituting public-private partnerships and reforms in budget spending. But the various implementation and coordination failures prevented many projects from proceeding at a much faster pace. The election of President Duterte into office offers a golden opportunity to implement reforms toward greater inclusivity, while at the same time continuing and maintaining the previous administration's macroeconomic policies, including fiscal, monetary, and trade policies. For instance, there is now deep-seated commitment to proceed at a more decisive and quicker pace when it comes to implementing projects and programs and addressing bottlenecks, especially those on infrastructure. Many tax reforms aimed at improving tax administration and the progressivity of the tax regime are also in the pipeline, some of which are seen to be approved early next year. Peace and order, especially at the grassroots level, have also come to the fore of the development agenda. With all these initiatives, and given where the economy has come from, I can affirm that the stated goal of achieving 7 to 8% GDP growth in the medium term, that is, for the period 2017 to 2022, is entirely possible. But ensuring poverty reduction and greater inclusivity in the future requires nothing less than acceleration of structural transformation, a shift of employment from low productivity to high productivity sectors or areas, not only across agriculture, industry, and services, but also within each of these sectors. Evidence-based and country experiences around the world in the past 50 years indicate that at the heart of the system driving poverty reduction is a structural economic transformation guided by efficiency-promoting policies and institutions. Closer to our shores are China, Vietnam, Thailand, and Indonesia, where a structural transformation was key to the dramatic success in reducing poverty in the past 3 decades. One of the key components of the overall strategy to make economic growth more enduring and more inclusive is the Philippine Competition Act, which became effective in August 2015. This legislation seeks to deepen efficiency enhancing competitive practices so that economic growth becomes more enduring and more inclusive, thereby fostering public welfare both in the short and long run. It aims to create a policy environment that promotes a fair and competitive market, a level playing field, by regulating business practices that unreasonably restrain competition. We see this legislation as game changer for the economy. The law is meant to address the very restrictive economic policies and anti-competitive business practices that have been too costly to the Philippine economy and public welfare. As most of you attending the conference know, the Philippine economy had a comparatively poor performance over the last 4 decades. There had been an equal distribution of opportunities, perpetuating a condition of widespread poverty, coexisting with growing affluence and prosperity in certain enclaves of Philippine society. Small and medium enterprises have found it extremely difficult to thrive and prosper in an economic environment where level playing field is more often of an exception than the norm, hindering the growth of employment opportunities. Lastly, the Philippines was not a significant player in the economically prosperous or prospering Asian region. It was worrisome in view of the ASEAN economic integration, where the role of the game across the region and the global community has become compete or perish. All in all, the Philippine reform story is far from complete. Moving forward, crafting and honing the reform agenda will require the collective effort of policymakers, advocates, and academics, not only in the Philippines, but also colleagues and friends from abroad. This is why I believe that this year's Philippine Update Conference 2016 plays a crucial role in deepening the understanding and collaboration between Filipino and Australian scholars by way of thoughtful and structured policy research and analysis. The event is most auspiciously marked by the 70th anniversary of the Philippine-Australian relations, built on long historical and bilateral ties. I am confident that the Philippine Update Conference and the Philippines Project to be launched soon will only serve to build stronger partnerships and linkages between the academic institutions of the Philippines and Australia, to foster knowledge exchange between Filipino and Australian scholars and policymakers, and to inform the policy agenda in these exciting times through highly relevant research and policy dialogues. Thank you and a pleasant evening to everyone. Mabuhay from Manila.